The previous collapse of well-fortified defenses shattered months of effort in just 2 days. Troops were thrown into disarray, and Western allies faced crushing disappointment. European capitals quietly questioned, is it wise to pour billions into a cause whose strongest lines crumble so swiftly? Now, political tremors shake the heart of Kiev. Pressure mounts relentlessly on the military leadership while public unrest swells like a rising storm. The internal crisis deepens, its roots dug firmly into the defeat at Iskra. Yet, miles away in Moscow, the mood is starkly different. There, this victory is hailed not just as a battlefield triumph but as a potent diplomatic weapon. A signal flashed across negotiation tables: Russia holds the cards, capable of executing precise, successful operations even as the entire military might of NATO seems arrayed against it. How long before the Western coalition confronts the grim question, can they actually win this protracted conflict? Experts warn that this is far from over. In the coming weeks, new offensives loom, designed to swell Russian control and encircle large enemy formations. Already, the Ukrainian forces battle a relentless squeeze, pressed by time shortages, dwindling resources, and eroding morale. But beyond the tactical, beyond the immediate pressures, Iskra embodies a seismic shift, a harsh new reality. Old doctrines and conventional standards buckle before this well-orchestrated, unconventional strategy. This battle will be etched in history as proof that decisive action on a single front can tilt an entire war. Iskra is no longer just a name on a map. It has become the emblem of a turning point, the spark igniting broader upheavals across military and political arenas. The full scope of this operation's lessons will echo for decades, rewriting views on conflict and power. One fact stands clear: here, a new chapter began. What seemed like a mere village now shapes the course of a wider war, with consequences destined to ripple through generations. What startling moves await next, and who will hold the ultimate advantage? The world watches, caught between anticipation and dread. The collapse of Iskra's defenses stunned the world. Once heralded as an impregnable fortress, it fell in just 48 hours. Such a swift downfall exposes deep fractures within the Ukrainian forces, worn-out troops, chaotic command, and flawed engineering. How could months of preparation vanish overnight? What does this mean for the broader conflict? This victory not only shattered a strategic point but struck at the heart of Kiev's military credibility. Reserves rushed to plug the gap, but desperation brewed disorder. Behind the scenes, whispers of command failures and intelligence breakdowns grew louder. It was not brute strength that won the day, it was painstaking planning, ruthless precision, and exploiting every weakness with surgical skill. For Moscow, this triumph is more than battlefield success, it is a diplomatic lever. The message is clear: force remains an effective option, shaking Western confidence in Kiev's resilience. With this leverage, Russia tightens its grip on negotiations, pressing an edge long feared. Meanwhile, Kiev faces mounting pressure, morale dips, political cracks widen, and the question echoes louder than ever: can shattered lines be rebuilt in time? Iskra's fall is the stark omen of a new dawn in this warfare, a shift neither side can ignore. With control over vital supply routes now seized, the balance of power tips decisively. Will Ukraine's allies reconsider their commitments when even the strongest defenses crumble so swiftly? The path ahead is uncertain, but what unfolds next will reshape the entire theater of conflict. As dusk fell on the battlefield, the silence was heavy. The distant echo of lost opportunities and shattered hopes lingered in the air. How long before the next strike? And where will the dominoes fall next? The answers may lie just beyond the horizon, in shadows shaped by this single, fateful breach. The front line, stripped bare over more than 100 kilometers, had become dangerously exposed. On the night before the assault, August 28, troops were already in their attack positions. Each artillery battery prepared multiple fallback points, allowing rapid redeployment. This spread-out arrangement made detection and destruction by the enemy nearly impossible. For the first time in many months, near absolute surprise was achieved on this sector of the front. The key lay in electronic warfare. Specialized rep complexes were deployed to sever Ukrainian communications within minutes of the attack's start. Commanders lost all contact with their units, unable to coordinate troops or call reinforcements. The defenders were left blind, stumbling in chaos. Medical teams played a crucial role too. Field hospitals and evacuation points were established a full day before the assault. Ambulance vehicles positioned themselves just beyond immediate danger, ensuring quick aid to the wounded. These efforts minimized casualties among the attackers and kept momentum high. Meanwhile, intercepted Ukrainian conversations revealed little anticipation of the looming storm. Most troops were engaged in routine guard changes, caught unaware, their readiness at a low ebb. Could anything have been more vulnerable than a sleeping giant suddenly awoken by thunder? At 4:30 in the morning, silence shattered. An intense artillery barrage thundered across the skies. Within 10 minutes, critical Ukrainian command centers in the vicinity of Iskra lay in ruins. The entire command network collapsed instantly. Radio links between battalions and companies vanished. Officers found themselves powerless to issue orders, panic seeping through the ranks like wildfire. Simultaneously, sabotage teams slipped behind enemy lines days earlier. Their mission, to cripple logistical hubs in the first moments of battle. Explosions tore through 3 ammunition depots and 2 fuel bases. Dark smoke spiraled into the dawn sky as defenders faced an overwhelming psychological blow. Ukrainian artillery scrambled for a response, but their fire was scattered, erratic, and wildly inaccurate. Most of their guns were silenced within 30 minutes, either destroyed outright or tracked down by counter-battery radar and swiftly targeted. At 5:15, storm units launched their advance. Modern tanks, shielded by mechanized infantry vehicles, smashed through the first defensive line. Ukrainian anti-tank crews found themselves overwhelmed, either destroyed under fire or forced to abandon their positions. But just as momentum seemed unstoppable, what unexpected peril lurked in the shadows, threatening to snatch victory from the jaws of success? The morning air held its breath, waiting for the next move that would determine the fate of Iskra. The last resistance had just been crushed in the basement of a residential building. A small group refused to surrender, opening fire when negotiators approached. Special tactics were employed to clear the underground stronghold. By 4:30 p.m., silence fell over the area, this final pocket was extinguished. Yet the evening brought a new reality. By dusk, Iskra had completely fallen under Russian control. The calm was broken only by occasional explosions, mines being defused, and the slow, endless files of prisoners. This moment was far more than a local victory, its ramifications stretched across the entire front line. Almost immediately, it became clear that holding Iskra reshaped the operational landscape in a drastic way. Seizing this small town opened a direct route to 3 major defensive strongholds of Ukrainian forces. Suddenly, these fortresses found themselves dangerously exposed. Their supply lines were strained, and the threat of being encircled loomed large. What wasn't expected was the agonizing dilemma now facing the Ukrainian command: abandon these positions or risk staggering losses by trying to defend them. Control over Iskra's vital transport junction also allowed Russian forces to threaten the flank of Ukrainian formations along a 100-kilometer stretch. This maneuver wasn't just tactical, it set the stage for a potential large-scale encirclement, plunging Kyiv into a deep strategic crisis. How could they respond when their defenses started unraveling so catastrophically? The psychological impact was perhaps the most devastating. Iskra's garrison was reputed as one of the most disciplined and battle-hardened. Its sudden collapse sent shockwaves through Ukrainian ranks and stunned Western advisors alike. Morale plummeted sharply. Panic spread in Kyiv, where politicians and generals scrambled for explanations, casting blame but finding few answers. Western allies grew uneasy as doubts about their multi-billion-dollar support began circulating in European capitals. If heavily fortified lines crumbled within mere days, could continued backing still be justified? Was the massive investment turning into a black hole of lost lives and shattered armaments? For Moscow, the win was not just military, it was a powerful diplomatic weapon. The success in Iskra strengthened Russia's hand for future negotiations, proving that force could shift the balance on the ground. As night deepened over the town, one question echoed louder than ever: what fresh storm was about to break across the shattered front? The previous assault revealed expertly coordinated assaults and methods to neutralize deadly traps laid by defenders in almost every corner. Engineers who dismantled explosives saved countless lives and allowed swift advances through the shattered streets. Yet, What echoed through the ruined avenues was the relentless precision of sniper pairs, hunters perched on lofty rooftops, systematically cutting down hostile firing points. Every breath, every step of the defenders felt as if shadowed by unseen eyes, a pressure constant and suffocating. Their shots were nearly flawless, no wasted bullet, every enemy target struck on the first attempt. This unyielding accuracy shattered morale, forcing defenders to abandon even their most fortified positions. At the heart of this brutal urban theater stood a transformed school building. Once a place of learning, it had become a fortified bastion, helmed by a determined undercolonel of the opposing forces. Machine gun nests crawled along its walls, a mortar was mounted to rain destruction. The basements, sinister and dark, were riddled with mines waiting to trap any intruder. But the attackers did not plunge headlong into the obvious trap. Instead, a daring maneuver unfolded. The building was encircled, all escape routes sealed like a tightening noose. Snipers smoked out threats on the upper floors, silencing sharpshooters with silent, deadly patience. Then, under cover of darkness and chaos, the assault squad burst in through the cramped underground passage, the basement. The clash inside was furious but brief, less than an hour. Resistance, fierce yet futile, eventually crumbled. 23 soldiers surrendered, including their commander. What the victors uncovered shocked even hardened veterans, a cache brimming with Western arms, American rifles, Canadian grenade launchers, Polish ammunition. This concrete evidence illuminated the vast scale of NATO's backing, a support that, in the end, could not shield the garrison from collapse. By midday, the city's core resistance was shattered. Scattered pockets scrambled toward the edges, desperate for escape. Yet escape was a lie. Every path was watched, every outlet controlled. Attempts to break through ended in capture or annihilation. The final embers of defiance flickered in the basement of an apartment building. A small group refused to yield. When envoys pleaded surrender, they answered with gunfire. The assault shifted to specialized tactics to clear this dark refuge. By 4:30 in the afternoon, silence fell once more, the last stronghold was extinguished. The city lay in ruin, its fall a decisive moment whose ripple effects surged far beyond the shattered streets. Previous summary: defensive structures were built to Western specs but backfired. Designed for direct attacks, they faltered as the assault struck from multiple directions. The element of surprise returned after months of stalemate. Electronic warfare complexes shut down Ukrainian communications, isolating command centers in minutes. Did a hidden flaw in supply placement seal fate before the first shot? Ammunition depots sat too close to civilian areas, complicating protection and making them prime targets. This vulnerability weakened defense lines from the start. Meanwhile, Ukrainian troops suffered from prolonged frontline deployments. Month after month, the same units endured exhaustion, morale collapse, and discipline lapses. Radio intercepts revealed growing chaos and insubordination, signs of an unraveling defense. At dawn on August 29, electronic warfare devices known as rep complexes activated flawlessly. Ukrainian communication channels went dead. Command posts lost contact, scattering orders, and paralyzing coordination. Within minutes, the chain of command fractured. This silence proved deadly as sabotage teams covertly inserted days before launched precise strikes against command hubs and ammo caches deep behind enemy lines. As artillery fire thundered above, explosions erupted simultaneously in the rear. This double blow crushed defender spirits. Despite Western media silence over the scale of disaster, evidence surfaced online. Footage of abandoned NATO weapon stockpiles inside intact hangars told a clear story. Panicked Ukrainian troops fled, leaving behind artillery, arms, and vital supplies. The fall of this strategic town was no mere skirmish loss. It shattered an entire military doctrine backed by billions in Western aid. Over 100 kilometers of front lay exposed, the doors to critical new targets swung wide open. The night before, August 28, set the stage. Artillery units took positions spread across multiple fallback locations to avoid detection. This dispersal thwarted enemy airstrikes and ensured readiness. The silence was the calm before the storm, but would surprise be enough when the sky soon erupted in fire? Sounds of engines and whispered commands under moonlight gave way to the roar of bombardment at 4:30 a.m. The precision was surgical. Key Ukrainian headquarters flattened almost instantly. Contact between battalions broke down. Confusion turned to panic, the front was swallowed by chaos. Behind the lines, covert groups ignited explosions on ammunition depots and fuel bases. Plumes of black smoke spiraled upward, cloaking the defenders in fear. Attempts at counter-battery fire were erratic and fateful. Most artillery became silent as radar-guided reprisals struck swiftly. By 5:15 a.m., armored assault teams pushed forward. Tanks supported by infantry combat vehicles shattered the front line. Anti-tank crews melted away under relentless fire or abandoned positions. Russian aircraft, Yak-38 strike jets and helicopter gunships, stalked the battlefield, targeting armored relics. Strikingly, no aircraft losses occurred, enemy air defense had been neutralized hours earlier. By 6 a.m., the outer defensive ring lay broken. Storm units reached outskirts, but what awaited was startling. Most Ukrainian soldiers had fled, dropping weapons, ammunition, even prepared meals. Disorganized counterattacks failed miserably. A reserve column sent to reinforce was wiped out before arrival. Morale hit rock bottom. The decisive moment had arrived. Would the urban battle crush resistance entirely? Each building, alley, and cellar now a deadly chessboard. The storming forces moved in with calculated precision. The city was carved into sectors, each assault group assigned clear objectives with strict deadlines. Communication shifted to backup channels independent of the now fractured command line. Combat engineers took point, detecting and disabling mines rigged throughout the city. Sniper teams claimed the high ground, stalking targets with lethal patience. Each shot found its mark, further eroding defenders' will to fight. The pivotal clash unfolded at a former school converted into a fortress. Ukrainian troops under a lieutenant colonel had turned the structure into a heavy bastion, machine gun nests, a mortar emplacement, booby-trapped basements. Instead of charging the front, attackers encircled the building, sealing escape routes. Snipers subdued upper floors. Then, assault teams stormed in through the basement. Fierce resistance gave way after less than an hour. 23 soldiers, including their commander, surrendered. The captured armory revealed Western weaponry, American assault rifles, Canadian grenade launchers, Polish munitions, stark proof of NATO's deep involvement. By midday, fighting in the city center waned. Remaining groups tried to break out but were intercepted or forced to capitulate. A final holdout entrenched in a residential cellar refused to surrender, opening fire on parley offers. Special clearing operations were deployed, ending resistance by late afternoon. By evening, the town was fully under new control. Silence descended, punctuated by occasional mine disposal blasts and the endless queues of captives. The fall of this strategic junction was more than a battlefield event, it marked the collapse of a defensive doctrine, the unraveling of years of planning, and the opening of a critical front exposed to new offensives. Will this victory reshape the broader conflict? What shockwaves will ripple through the region as entrenched lines vanish in days? As the sun set on August 29, shadows hung heavy over a front transformed forever. What happens when the unthinkable occurs in a conflict that has been building for years? On August 29, a seemingly innocuous location known as Iskra became the epicenter of a historical shift in warfare. Within just 2 days, defensive lines long considered unbreakable fell, stunning not just Ukraine but also its global allies. How could a fortified town, prepared for every possible assault, crumble so abruptly? Iskra, a crucial logistical hub, was fortified as if it were a castle. Can you imagine the pride felt by the commanders as they built bunkers, planted mines, and laid counter-tank barriers? However, in a plot twist no one saw coming, all those defenses proved futile against a meticulously planned offensive that had been in the making since spring. Russian intelligence had woven an extensive web of informants within enemy ranks, capturing every troop movement, every supply shift. The carefully constructed frameworks of Western engineering backfired, intended to repel a frontal assault while completely oblivious to the multi-directional strike looming on the horizon. By the time the assault began, Ukraine faced a new world, a system of communications paralyzed by electronic warfare, command centers isolated, and a burgeoning wave of psychological turmoil among the troops. With their lines of defense crumbling beneath the weight of panic, how did soldiers cope with the disorganization that had enveloped them? The first day brought chaos. Early in the morning, the silence shattered with the echoes of artillery, each explosion reverberating like thunder, as Russian forces seized the initiative. In an unforeseen escalation, Ukrainian forces began to abandon not just their equipment but their very will to fight. With unconfirmed reports of entire stockpiles abandoned, what fate awaited the brave defenders of this once impregnable fortress? As the dust began to settle, Iskra transformed before their eyes into a battlefield of disarray. The psychological operations were equally significant. As Ukrainian defenders drowned in confusion, Russian reconnaissance and sabotage units executed their plan, dismantling ammunition depots just as the shelling commenced, an orchestrated strike that fragmented the morale of those who remained. Panic spread like wildfire as the reality of defeat loomed closer. Still, the echoes of defiance lingered. Resistance where brave men refused to give in intensified in pockets of the town. Yet, would it be enough?